Thank you, Professor Eddie Morse, Rector of IHE Delft, colleagues from the academic board, professors from other universities, distinguished colleagues, honorable guests, students, friends and family. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today for my inaugural lecture. There are many things that I would like to say that not many of you knows about my journey to water that Eddie did not mention. And the first one that I want to show you is that I grew up with the example of what it means to be a creative researcher and an innovative lecturer in a time when you could not have phones or projectors, and yet you do everything you have available in the class to share what you know. What you see in the right-hand side picture is my father lecturing hydraulic structures to his students. And on the left-hand side, it's a picture of me now, but many times when I was little, he was taking me with him to the university, and I was lecturing to an empty room, drawing on the board. I grew up in Romania, opposite to the seaside. I always wanted to live by the sea, maybe because my mother has the same name with the main city that it is there. But what I want to show you that I grew up in Timișoara, which is very, it's at the intersection almost of two rivers, and you will see why I want to insist on that. In time and in the very much past of the time, the city was a wetland, always full of flood, a very flat city, and this is where the two rivers are going close to the city. And that was around 1750, and around 1760, a Leiden graduate came there to design an engineering system that will protect the city from floods. And though the system was very flat, he found a very ingenious solution to divert the floods coming on the river coming to the city, on the other city, all gravitationally, and he found also protection against droughts in the same time. So it was not only against flood, but also about droughts. So whenever there were droughts and there was not enough water on the city, that he designed a canal that will reroute the water towards the city, so there will be enough city. Now, 250 years after, the city is still protected against floods and droughts with the same system that exists there. There were some improvements in the sluices, but it is still there functioning. And if I look on the canals that exist in Europe, actually I can theoretically come from my home in Timișoara to my home in Delft only by canals. So. And that brings me to today and to the Netherlands and to the stars that you have seen in the invitation, and maybe you ask yourself, what are they? They are projects where I have been involved, widespread globally, and I can say that in 90% of these places I have also traveled and visited the places. And the work done there was research, capacity building, collaborations in rivers and river basins and lakes. As an overarching focus of my research, indeed, it lies in the mathematical modeling, though I'm also a hydrotechnical engineer, so it's both that I am. And the broad range of issues that I have addressed are water quality, hazards, mapping hazards, floods and droughts, but a lot has been done for floods, much more than for droughts, and sustainability, where I was looking at water availability, climate change and hydropower availability. And this brings me to what I would like to share with you today about mapping the hydroinformatics in the artificial intelligence and the digital innovation landscape. As I prepared for this lecture, looking at what to select to present here, I have reflected a lot on the wonderful people with whom I have worked throughout the years on research, the colleagues, the PhD students, the MSc, and this is a celebration of our shared success, because certainly I would not have been able to deliver this lecture without this collaborative work. I will start from the AI, which is something that nowadays, since 2020, became so much in all our minds, and we are expecting everything to be done by AI. It's widely accepted that we want everything from the AI. Well, the foundation of the AI of today was actually put in almost 200 years ago by George Boole. We all use Boolean logic for the information theory. And then it was recoined, but it went through winter without financing, then again with financing, with a boom. We at IHE started to use AI around 1995, and in 10 years' time, I looked, almost 70% of the PhD and MSc studies were about AI. Later, fortunately, the balance started to be equal between the two paradigms and between AI and physically based models. And that is especially because nowadays we are also using hybrid modeling, looking at both. And definitely hydrology will be needed, and hydrology modeling, it cannot disappear. Also, I was trying to look what are we using from AI, because the terms is so wide. It's used so much from medicine to e-commerce. You can even have one tutor that you tell them what you want to learn, and they will know for sure what you need to learn in order to excel. And yet we in hydroinformatics, we are not using all these capabilities. And I looked at the last 10 years of Journal of Hydroinformatics and at several journals where hydroinformatics as a keyword was mentioned. And from these 647 papers, a text mining was giving what we are doing in hydroinformatics. We are doing machine learning and deep learning in the AI area. And just to give you very quickly an example where a combination of machine learning and of physically based models are used, it's a PhD work of Quan Pan, where we were looking at the water quality in Taihu Lake, and they were trying to see how chlorophyll A, we were trying together with a stakeholder there, how the stakeholders and the decision maker can have an analysis of the water quality and test different solutions such that in the end they will select which one is better for the water quality. Of course, such a system will not give the solution. The decision maker is the one, the human person is the one who will select the solution in the end. And another example that I can give in the machine learning is how we can use machine learning algorithms for the optimal control of water systems. But what I want to show you next is how to use a lot of data from the pattern recognition part, from shape recognition algorithm, to use it as a metrics for flood extent. Normally, if you look at the model results, you would need to know if your model is good enough and if the flood extent of a model is good enough to be used by decision makers. And here you have an example, a simple visual comparison between what a remote sensing images would give as an extent for the flood and what the model gives. And it looks pretty obvious as it was seen. Just look and you will see, as it was mentioned in the previous talk. But when you have a very complex system with a lot of intricate canals, this is not very easy to determine. Classically, what we do with the flood metrics are looking at the flood and comparing with what was measured as flood, and looking at the areas, assessing how much this area says, and you can see different colors, blue, red, pinkish, and gray, depending on how the model shows exactly what was observed or not. This research, before I go further, I would like to mention that this research work is done with the PhD student Ioana within a project called SENT, which is Smart Toolbox for Citizens, so data can be collected also by citizens. Coming back to the example, classically the flood metrics are looking just at ratios between these areas. And sometimes that is not enough in showing the spatial, the temporal evolution of these models. And what we were looking at is proposing and looking at Hausdorff distance that is used for shape recognition, for pattern recognition. It uses a lot of points and data and looks at similarity between these points data and requires complex algorithms. This is why it's also used for face recognition. Can we use it for flood metrics for determining if our flood models are behaving well? So for that, we introduced different ways of computing these Hausdorff distance metrics and looking at the river that it is also there from where the flood comes. And I will give you an example of the theoretical experiment that we tested with the proposed metrics. So if we have an observed ideal flood area, which is blue, the rectangular blue area, and the flood model that will give you the dotted red line, you can see that they might be the same area but not in the right position, or it can be not the area that it needs to be, or not even capturing the flooding. So if we look at classical metrics and the ratios of the metrics, we can see that they are hardly able to capture the shapes. They are showing that there is a good match, but not really saying much about the shape, like for here, where all are having the same metrics. So this is a very good way of assessing flood model, but not enough. If we look at the shape matching from face recognition, we can see that some of these metrics are able to show that there are shapes that are matching and also in the direction of the flood, but they are not fully matching the flood. And that led us to go to a next experiment, which is a very complex experiment for all the hydrodynamic models. And the experiment was defined as a benchmark by the Environmental Protection Agency in UK, where 2D square area, slightly sloped with a lot of depression, is filled with the water. This is a hydrograph that it is giving water to this area. And this water, it's a very difficult test for momentum equation, and that we were trying to see if such flood can be captured if it is modeled by our metrics. So what we did, we ran the model for 32 hours and 12 hours and considered that the observed one is that when the roughness coefficient is 0.03, and look at the simulation and compared how much these metrics can capture the flood extent. So if we look at the first 30 minutes and if we look at 8 of the metrics that are used classically, 6 out of the 8 metrics are able to capture this area. And if we take 5 of the metrics from the shape from Hausdorff distance, there are 3 out of 5 that are able to capture this. This is only at the first 30 minutes. If we go further for the next to the 12 hours and we look at capturing, we can see that the classical metrics, only 3 of them are still able to capture the areas. And so as time passes, they are not performing well, while the Hausdorff distance is able to capture more and more. And this brought us to the conclusion that while the metrics are very good, a new tool has to be added to the metrics that also will be able to capture the temporal evolution of a model. And there is much more to be studied in this, for these metrics for flood extent, but it is a very promising result. Before I will go to the digital innovation part of the presentation, I want to show you a bit, because a research group, Hydroinformatics research group, at IHE does a lot of artificial intelligence, and as it rains outside, there is an umbrella that protects that research from the rain, though it looks at the rain. The group does hydroclimatic analysis of floods, hydrological modeling, water distribution network, surrogate modeling, all with artificial intelligence, and all this feeds into the education module that it is currently called Artificial Intelligence for Water in our master program. So very fast I will go through that. For hydroclimatic analysis, our colleagues are within the CLINT project are looking at enhanced climate services at a local scale using artificial intelligence and machine learning, and they have several publications. There were several PhD studies and publications about analysis of floods and droughts using artificial intelligence techniques, and also MSc studies. The same is for the hydrological modeling, and here there is also enhancement of data with citizen collected data. And also for the water distribution networks, there are several publications, but there is a lot of work that it is ongoing on, as well as for surrogate and hybrid modeling. And as I mentioned, all feeds into the module on artificial intelligence for water. And this brings me to the second mapping of hydroinformatics in the age of digital innovation. That is a buzzword nowadays that everyone likes. And definitely it refers to development and implementation of new ideas, of processes, of technologies, especially to solve problems. That is very important, to solve problems, and solving problems also to improve efficiency and enhance experiences. It involves using both artificial intelligence, digital technologies, physically based modeling, big data analytics, and with that it creates different practices, entire ways of looking at modeling experiences. And what is also very important are the novel ways to interact with stakeholders. And why this is very important is because lately the water is at the wrong place, the wrong quantity, at the wrong time. So we do need better information and predictions to understand and to manage water resources. And I think that was coming very clearly from the mini symposium that we had in the beginning. So there are a lot of pressures on water resources, and if I look that the IPCC report says that a very small change in the temperature will generate a lot of increase in the intensity and frequency of extreme events that will lead to more droughts, more floods. Then we need to look for conservation and sustainability of these water resources. How? There are a lot of available data and sensors on the ground, but there is a lot of data available from satellites and from remote sensing images, and all these data, along with phone and with radar collected data, with citizen collected data, will feed into very detailed distributed models or artificial intelligence model that will give different results that will inform society and decision maker. And society and decision maker will be prepared and will propose mitigation measures. And if I go further, why? Definitely to reduce vulnerability and to build up resilience, but that is for the three pillars that we need to have water for all in terms of quantity and quality, and also addressing the sustainable development goals. We need to do disaster risk reduction, and we need to understand and to look more at the climate change. And with this in mind, I selected two works that we have done. This work that I'm going to present you here, it's done within the Water for Peace and Security, together with colleagues, with Andrea, with Johan, and with two MSc students. We were looking at Lake Turkana, at the volume and the lake water levels in Lake Turkana, which is in Kenya, and part of it, a tip of it, is in Ethiopia. So it's a transboundary lake. It has an enormous area, but what is also very interesting is that the main water supply to this lake is done by a basin in the upstream, is the Omo catchment that supplies water in the river. It's 90% of the water in the lake comes from there. There are other catchments that are supplying water, like Turkana and Kerio, but not as much, and some others very small, but not as much as Omo. And there are many challenges there. First of all, social, because a lake is the source for income due to fishing, due to the nomad tribes that goes around the lake. There are flood and droughts and catchment degradation, and the main problem is that it is a data scarce area, because there is a lack of monitoring system and a lack of data, but we have seen that that can be improved. There are two major sources of water level measurements, and one is from the Kenyan Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, this KMFRI, and the other one is values computed from satellites by Technical University of Munich in a database for hydrological time series for inland waters. And you can see that there is an overlap between these time series, but it is not continuous and a lot of overlap. So that creates problems, and extra challenges in the problem is that there is an entire hydropower scheme of dams that will keep the water in the catchment and might deplete the water level in Lake Turkana. Not to say that there are irrigation exploitation plans. How to address that? Well, if there is no data, there must be some innovative ways to compute what is the water availability there, but also to take the advantage of the satellite measurements and the strengths of the big data available. So in order to have a solution, the first step was to backtrack to determine discharges from the two measured water levels and the lake volume. So the idea is simple, so looking at how much the water level is changing to determine how much water was coming over a certain period of time into the lake. So that was back-calculated discharges from two sources. And having that, this will be used to calibrate and validate a hydrological model that will compute much more detailed the water that comes into the lake. So that is the next step, to build a hydrological model, to use remote sensing to calibrate and validate then the data. I'm going to show you only some as an idea what is happening in this hydrological model of the upstream Omo catchment that brings 90% of the water, but we have done also studies on the other two catchments. So if we look at the wealth of data available out there, you can see that there is precipitation, potential evapotranspiration, land cover, soil maps, digital elevation models at different spatial resolution, at different temporal resolution for extended period of time from different sources. So there is data available if we try to access it and to use it. So this is what we were using to build a model, a hydrological model that was having different sub-basins, and were computing the amount of water at the outlet that comes to the lake. So this, you can see the result based on precipitation and on the characteristics that were downloaded on how much the water will come into the lake. If we look at the calibration data for the point based compared with the back calculated data, we can see that the data shows the trend in the lake, and also the validated and tested data shows that it is a good trend and captures well the volume that are coming into the lake. Well, based on these volumes that are coming into the lake, and from satellite data how much the precipitation and the evapotranspiration is, we were able to determine the inflows into the lake and to determine the lake water level variation to build another model for the lake water level variation. And why is this important? I just wanted to show you that usually we all aim to have a certain water level in the lake, and we want to keep that water level. On the right-hand side, you have how much water comes into the lake, and on the left-hand side, the lake water level. And of course, that one would want to keep that level, and that means to have enough inflow into the lake and not having evapotranspiration or usage of water. Based on this model, we have obtained for the year 2000 the extent of the lake at different moments in time, and you can see that remote sensing images coming from Landsat 5 and Landsat 7, they are the blue areas. They are compared with the model extent, which is the red line, and they are giving quite good evaluation of the data. There is an overestimation at the south part and an overestimation at the northern part, but this is because of the Landsat data is not exactly at the same time measured as the model gives result. And the last part to investigate and to use it further when stakeholders are coming together is if there are dams built that will keep the water and will not let the Lake Turkana to be filled with water, what will be the effect on the lake and the water level on the lake, and how can they operate these dams such that the lake will be impacted as little as possible. And we were looking in a case of a lot of drought and 3 years of droughts, one after another, what will be the effect if you don't have dams in the upper catchment, and if you have dams, how much this will affect the lake, and that can be further used there. And this can show that all these models and innovative solutions are very good support tools for decision making, especially when complex decision making are needed. They are capable to show us, to help us investigate droughts and floods under the climate change, and they are capable to make complex representation of reality using both in situ and all the other types of data from remote sensing in particular in this presentation, but also to test solution for mitigation. And one of the solutions for mitigation can be the nature-based solution that are lately more and more used instead of infrastructure solutions. And in order to test that this is really well done, you need to develop key performance indicators to assess the mitigation measures. And I would like to show you the research work that was done together with PhD Harris, with Claudia, with Andrea, with Halekian, and 2 MSc students in a project that started 3 years ago on revealing the role of GEOS as a default digital portal for building climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies. GEOS stands for Global Earth Observation System of Systems, and it offers an entry point to users seeking data, software packages, such that you can download them and use them, and they provide up-to-date information. Well, what is very interesting is that we live in the Netherlands, and everyone might think that we are in an area that there are no droughts whatsoever because it rains a lot. But the case study that was part of the project is the IHE Delft catchment, where there are a lot of droughts, and it is a transboundary catchment, and some of the data is not available. We had a lot access to the data in the Netherlands, but not so much on data that it is in Belgium. Originally, it was a wetland, but majority of the land use has changed due to agriculture. And water and climate change created water-stressed catchment during the summer. And local authorities have noticed that they need to give much more often bans for the use of water, and by bans I mean that agriculture users were not allowed to use so much water from surface or from groundwater. And they wanted to explore if nature-based solutions are robust to be applied in the catchment. The local authorities with whom we collaborated are the province of North Brabant, who was part of the project, and Brabant Delta Water Board, who was very kind and provided a lot of data and participated to all co-design. The solution approach is the same that I was mentioning before, to model a fully distributed physically based model for the actual situation, and then to analyze for the future what are the climate change stresses in the catchment, and propose adaptation strategies that will be checked with key performance indicators, and then to assess the impact of potential measures. And I will start with a complex representation of a catchment, that it is fully distributed. The spatial resolution is 500 meters by 500, and we were having around 1,500 cells of computation, and it is very heavy to run, and this is why sometimes with development of high performance computing, we could go even to a resolution of 100 by 100. So what you see here is that the model is looking at surface water, but also at the ground water, and the whole processes. It's not a lumped model, it looks at whole processes and it captures all processes. The used modeling tool is IHE, which is able to represent the physical processes as equations, as mathematical equations. These equations are solved by finite differences, and the data that is there, apart from the river networks that was, and the whole structures that were provided by the province, we could use globally available data from Copernicus, like topography, like the land use data, and the soil distribution maps, and we were using an empirical formulation for potential evapotranspiration. Apart from that, though this is a physically based model, we were trying to see for the next 50 years if we use a machine learning for how the land use is changing, that will give you the changes of the land for the next 50 years. What is very important when one checks if these models are good enough is to check at an observation at a certain point. What we did for this model is that we did multi-site, multi-variable evaluation. So it was not looking at one point and one variable, but looking at discharge, groundwater levels, and actual evapotranspiration to see if that model performs well. And very quickly, I will show you how well it performs at the surface level in 3 points, at the outlet, middle, and at the border with Belgium, where we had data for the part of calibration and validation. These are the colored part, and the black lines are the observed data. And a similar analysis was done for groundwater, where you can see the groundwater levels. Here we even had data for Belgium. Well, after such a model is ready, the forcing with climate change data was analyzed, and until October last year, the Dutch Meteorological Institute, KNMI, had 4 scenarios for future climate downloaded from the Netherlands, and these 4 referred to moderate to warm scenarios in terms of temperature, this G and W, and then also at influence of circulation, if it is small, L and H. So these 4 we were running and get the results. And in November 2023, rightfully, KNMI came with 6 other scenarios, because they reevaluated in the last 10 years what is happening, and their suggestion is to use 4 of these climate scenarios to test what is happening. And what I'm going to show you is the results of the most disadvantageous scenario, where we have dry condition and this high HD data. So it's high emission. So what we were doing in order to see how can be mitigated the effects of climate change through the discussions with the province and with the water board, we were looking at nature-based solutions. There are many nature-based solutions available and to be tested, but not all of them are feasible in all catchments. And we were looking at 6, selecting with them, because the province of North Brabant has a nature management plan and a green-blue mantle. So all these, they have decided where to put, where to have the nature. So everything was in discussion with them, and based on that, and on running testing on nature-based solution on one by one solution, we could go and select the ones, a combination of the ones that are having a positive impact on groundwater availability, and these were 4: ditch blocking, wetlands restoration, infiltration ponds, and heathland restoration. And we tested 2 strategies for mitigation. So I'm going to present you the results of 3 scenarios, 3 run scenarios: the base case with the historical observations, the climate change, what does it give in terms of bands, and that is for the year 2050 to 2059, so the decade starting 2050, and what is happening if nature-based solutions are there implemented as mitigation. So in order to assess these things, one need to define key performance indicators, and there are several key performance indicators that were selected, like groundwater availability, soil moisture index, groundwater dynamics, water stress ratio, surface water availability. And 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with a stakeholder, both in the Netherlands and in Belgium, and we were, after showing the results, we were also asking them which nature-based solutions are feasible in their region, though the ones that we have selected are in collaboration with the province and with the water board. But most important, they had to score what is the most important key performance indicator. And as you can see, the most important for them was groundwater availability, surface water, followed by the soil moisture index. So this is why I will present you with the results on surface water availability, which is defined as number of days within a season in which the flow simulated at a specific location drops below a predefined threshold. That means looking how much availability of water is below a 10 percentile or below a 40 percentile. And then based on that, there will be total bans of using of water or partial bans. And this is what one can see for a decade. So the graph in the top, it's a decade of computation for the discharge. The dotted black line represents a decade historical observation for the base scenario. And you can see when there are bands. So bands are when you see colors. The darker the color, that means total ban, and the lighter the color is partial ban. So in the decade, if the situation as it is as now, there are bans, but not as many as it will be when there is climate change scenario. You can see that there is every year a lot of bans and total bans. That is very important. And there are also partial bans, a lighter part, but still the situation is very bad. When nature-based solutions are implemented, as we discussed with them, there still will be bans. There is no situation where you can eliminate bans totally, but it can be explored further. But there is less bans, there is less total bans based on the nature-based solution that were selected. In a similar manner, the groundwater availability will be with a number of days within a season in which the groundwater level is simulated at a specific cell. will drop below a specific threshold. And now we have here 1,500 cells. In each of these cells, data can be checked and bands can be checked. So a similar graph like before. So in the case of groundwater, for a decade, for a present decade, there are bands, not as much as in the future. So in the future, there will be bands almost every year. But with the solution that were implemented, there will be less bands that will be given. And I'm showing you a cell that it is in the Netherlands towards the end of the catchment. Of course, if a cell is selected in Belgium, it will be a situation where there are similar bands, and that is because we did not implement nature-based solution in that area. And if I go to show you the soil moisture index, then it's in the area where nature-based solutions are, there is more water, and the difference can show you much better where there will be improvements. And as I said, due to the fact that there are no nature-based solution implemented here, we don't see a difference. However, during the workshop that we had 2 weeks ago, the stakeholders that were coming from Belgium, they were very much interested in the results, and they were very curious to implement nature-based solution that they are considering interesting for their areas. And I will come to the hydroinformatics at IHE, and I can say that I am optimistic about the future of hydroinformatics in responding to the challenges and needs of our times. And we look at hydroinformatics as a flow of information from data to decision support systems through models and knowledge. But the flow is not going in one direction only. The flow is continuous, and it is always that the decision support system will look for availability of information. There will be looking for availability of data, for new data, for improved data. And of course, data screening needs to be there. So the flow is continuous. And with that, I would like to propose that the future of hydroinformatics research at IHE goes in 3 main pillars. And one is the integration of models and digital twins. And when I mention about that, is about integration of models in digital twins as a support system, as tools for management. And they will rely on a combination of models which will contribute to decision maker. And before lunch, we were talking with Professor Wright and with Lindsay how these tools will have and what type of models will have. And I would say that ideally, even governance model will be integrated there, and they will feed back on types of policies, and they will reconsider the policies based on the results of such models. And that would be possible if complex dynamics of stakeholders are taken into consideration, and that can be done through collaborative modeling, through co-design. And the work that it is needed there, that it is very important, is to retrieve information, of course, to integrate the models, but this information should not be duplicated and copied on a local site. It should always be available there. The digital twin need to know from where to retrieve data, and as soon as data is more refined, better resolution, it will be taken and everything will be reassessed and recomputed. And of course, that brings to the improvement of currently available models with newly available data that is in support of the previous presented pillar. We need to look at data collection, at guidance on how these data should be used. It's not so easy. There are citizen science data, radio signals, and this data needs to be guided on how it should be used. It should follow certain standards, and to look at open source data such that they are used in robust models. I would say embrace the open data practices, use the data that it is out there. And definitely being at IHE, I think that we will look on how to define algorithms to compute and to determine the sustainable development goals from globally available data. There are so many indicators that we can determine from this globally available data. And the third pillar will be a system approach for climate change adaptation. As we have seen and mentioned the whole afternoon, the changes to flood magnitude and frequency are happening, and they have been studied at local levels for the flood magnitude, while the drought signals have been generally explored over larger spatial scale, larger time scales. And that shows that there is a need to understand what has been done so far, and also to identify the gaps in current scientific outcomes, and to test the sustainability of the solutions after looking at this and studying that. We also need to look at uncertainty. That fits very well. I was very happy to see what you were mentioning, Lindsay, and how decision support system can help climate change such that robust decisions are taken. Without doubt, we need to do pragmatic and critical research. And one should not see all the pillars that I have defined that they are referring to one particular part of the hydroinformatics. They are always overlapping between data and models, then between models and knowledge, and also between knowledge and DSS. So there will always be overlapping and exchanges between them. And last but not least, definitely we will need to mirror every research that we do in education, because it is very important that we strengthen the curricula regarding the use of data and models, especially looking at the current needs and making those who use them understand the differences and understand how to use them. So there should be academic interdisciplinarity without doubt, and the rapid changing in technologies requires that we adapt continuously the curricula. With this, I have finalized the content part of my presentation, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank a number of people who mean so much in my professional and private life. Success is never achieved alone, but rather through collective efforts of those who are near us and who inspire us to be best of ourselves. My gratitude goes to IHE Delft, first of all, with whom I've grown from IHE Delft to IHE Delft. So when I entered IHE, it was IHE Delft, and now we took the stairs and we are at IHE Delft. To TU Delft for making me a part of their professorial group, and to my alma mater for still entrusting me to do guiding of their PhD. I'm grateful to all my colleagues, either in the past or now, and my humble apologies that I don't have a slide big enough to have all of them, and I cannot mention all of them, but I'm privileged to work here, and I'm grateful for the positive attitude and for the atmosphere we have in the Institute. While preparing for this presentation, I found a photo from 2005 from a meeting defining what we should teach and what we should research in hydroinformatics at IHE. I'm deeply honored for the opportunity to succeed Professor Mike Abbott alongside esteemed professors in hydroinformatics, illustrious Professor Roland Price and Dimitri Solomati. I want to thank NAC for choosing me and the Rectorate for approving, trusting that I can further contribute to the development of the field of hydroinformatics at IHE. I'm grateful to Professor Roland Price and Jan Leindijk, who recognized potential in me several years ago when they hired me, and without their invaluable support, I might not be standing here today. Big appreciation to Arthur, with whom I co-promoted most of my PhD students, and with whom we started the digital innovation of the Yellow River many years back. Thank you, Dimitri, for keeping us together, and the HI group, as a HI group, encouraging us to do the research we like the most. And from the bottom of my heart, my profound gratitude goes for my amazing colleagues in the hydroinformatics groups. You are the best colleagues that one could wish for, and your great expertise and belief in what we do have played a significant role in my growth, and I cherish a lot the environment that we work in and we collaborate. Special thanks goes to my colleague and friend Andrea, with whom I shared the office for many years. We worked on projects, on PhD students, on MSc, and developed courses. But what I want to tell you is that I learned from Andrea that any problem, no matter how small, one needs to consider it important, because it is important for the people for whom the solution is sought. And the other thing that I learned is that I should not answer an email that upsets me in an immediate 2-3 hours. I should wait for 2-3 hours, and it will not look so bad. Thank you, Linake, Dominique, Joanna, and Jos in the past for keeping track of all important things that we tend to forget or leave aside. And thank you, Annick and Dominique, for all the support and help for preparing this day. Thank you to all my former and current PhD students, from whom I learned calm and patience in time of stress. And I'm so impressed by their intelligence and dedication and creativity that I think the future of our field is really in very good hands. Thank you to all my students for their enthusiasm, through which I've gained insights into the challenges into their respective countries, and for their dedication to the area they do research in, for their curiosity. To all my collaborators, though I cannot mention all, I try to put the collaborators and the projects in which we have worked in, to partner institutions, universities, and the water sector. And my gratitude extends far beyond the workplace. My sincere appreciation to my dear friends, some of whom came from far to be with me on this special day. Your friendship has been always a source of joy and inspiration, and a constant reminder of the importance of genuine friendship. I had ups and downs in my career, and you supported me with words of encouragement, and that kept me going. To my close friend, my close family, Dana, thank you for being part of my journey. And this last slide, I hope that I will be able to say it, because in conclusion, I would like to thank my family, my parents, who always supported me, and same goes for my parents-in-law. And to the most important people in my life, my husband, Adrian, and our daughter. She's joining online. She couldn't be today here, but she is showing the power of digital world. My husband always encouraged me for every step I took in my career, and sometimes was even pushing me when I was not really decided. Thank you both for always standing by me, being the pillars of strength in my life. Ik heb gezegd, thank you.